Welcome back to our channel and remember to subscribe. Today we have the Daily Mail crying again over Prince Archie as we approach his 7th birthday, and I would honestly say this is unacceptable. The Daily Mail crying about a 7-year-old's title on his birthday is peak pettiness. Archie didn't ask to be born royal. Maybe focus on actual child poverty in the UK instead of obsessing over a little boy's name. Let the kid eat cake in peace. There's no controversy regarding Archie's title. The controversy is how those people feel about the fact that he is royal, that his sister is royal, that his mother is royal and married to Diana's second son, that Meghan's mother is black, and that Harry loves her and his nuclear family. They're so mad Meghan will never let them have access to her son and daughter. They tormented Diana by preying on her sons, but Meghan Sussex holds all the power now. That child is somewhere eating cake in peace and enjoying his day like any normal kid. Love that for him. The jealousy is beyond the limit. Every time I see the Daily Mail complain about Prince Harry and Meghan's kids, I just feel bad because this family literally stepped out years ago. They did that purposely for their own peace and privacy, but the UK media still stalk them badly. It is even becoming worse when Archie or Lilibet, innocent souls, are being dragged into media scrutiny. Why would innocent Archie and Lilibet go through such treatments? I really advocate that the media stop invading these kids' privacy for God's sake anyway. As we head to Prince Archie's 7th birthday, let us all stand up for Archie and wish him the best in all steps he takes. Prince Archie is well raised and I wish him the best now and even in his future. Now today's discussion is one that honestly should make all of us pause for a moment and think a little deeper. Because as we approach the 7th birthday of Prince Archie, we are once again seeing conversations circulating in the media space that raise a very simple but very important question. Why is there so much attention placed on a child? And not just any child, but a young boy who did not choose public life, who did not choose the circumstances of his birth, and who certainly did not choose to be part of ongoing public narratives that continue to surround his family. Now, at the centre of this conversation are his parent, Meghan Sussex. And as we all know, discussions about them have been ongoing for years, across different platforms, across different countries, and across different perspectives. But today, the focus shifts slightly. Because instead of talking about adults who have chosen to live parts of their lives in the public eye, the conversation begins to include children. And that is where things become uncomfortable for many people. Now let's slow this down for a moment and really think about what that means. Prince Archie is turning 7. At that age, a child's world should be simple. It should be filled with learning, play, curiosity, and growth. It should not be shaped by headlines, commentary, or public debate. And yet, because of who his parents are, he becomes part of a larger conversation that he had no role in creating. And that is where many people begin to question the boundaries. Because there is a line between public interest and personal intrusion. And when it comes to children, that line should be very clear. Now, one of the recurring elements in these conversations is the discussion around titles. And this is where things often become exaggerated beyond their actual significance. Because a title at its core is a formal designation. It is part of traditional structure. But for a child, it does not define their day-to-day reality. It does not define their day-to-day reality. It does not define their personality. It does not define their childhood experiences. And yet, it becomes a focal point for discussion. And that raises an important question. Are we focusing on what truly matters? Or are we focusing on what generates attention? Because those two things are not always the same. Now let's talk about attention for a moment. In today's media landscape, attention is currency. The more attention a topic generates, the more it is discussed, the more visible it becomes. And the more visible it becomes, the more it feels important, even when it may not actually be. And this is where we have to be careful. Because when attention drives narrative, priorities can become distorted. Now, when we bring this back to Prince Archie, what many people are reacting to is not just the existence of discussion, but the intensity and frequency of it. Because when a child becomes a recurring subject in media conversations, it creates a sense of imbalance. A sense that the boundaries between public life and private life are being stretched too far. Now, let's expand this conversation to include Princess Lilibet as well. Because just like her brother, she is also part of this broader narrative. And again, the same concern arises. Why are children being drawn into discussions that revolve around adult decisions, institutional structures, and media narratives? Because children are not participants in these conversations. They are not public commentators. They are simply living their lives. And that distinction should matter. Now, one of the key elements in this entire discussion is the concept of privacy. Privacy is not just about hiding information. It is about creating space for individuals to live, grow, and develop without constant observation. And for children, that space is even more important. Because childhood is a formative period. It is a time of learning, of discovery, of building identity. And that process should not be shaped by external pressure or constant public scrutiny. Now, when Prince Harry and Meghan Sussex made the decision to step back from certain aspects of public life, one of the central themes that emerged was the desire for greater control over their environment, a desire to create a space where their family could exist with more privacy and less intrusion. And regardless of how people interpret that decision, the intention behind it is something that many people can understand. Because the idea of protecting one's family is universal. It is not political. It is not controversial. It is human. Now let's talk about media responsibility, because this is where the conversation becomes even more important. Media is not just a source of information. It is a powerful influence on public perception. It shapes how stories are told. It shapes what is emphasized. And it shapes how audiences interpret events. And with that influence comes responsibility. Responsibility to consider impact. Responsibility to consider the people at the center of the story. Now, when children become part of media narratives, that responsibility becomes even greater. Because children do not have the ability to respond, to clarify, or to control how they are portrayed. And that makes them particularly vulnerable to the effects of public discussion. Now, let's talk about audience responsibility as well. Because this is not just about media creators. It is also about how we, as viewers, engage with content. Because every time we click, share, comment, or react, we contribute to the visibility of a narrative. We amplify it. We extend its reach. And in doing so, we play a role in shaping the conversation. So the question becomes, what kind of conversations do we want to amplify? Do we want to amplify discussions that focus on children's private lives? Or do we want to shift the focus toward more meaningful topics? Because the power to shape narratives does not belong only to media outlets. It belongs to audiences as well. Now, as we move deeper into this discussion, it is important to recognize that not all attention is positive. Attention can be neutral. It can be critical. And sometimes it can be intrusive. And when attention becomes intrusive, it crosses a line that should be respected, especially when it comes to children. Now, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Because this is not just about one child or one family. It is about how society treats children who are connected to public figures. It is about whether we recognize their right to privacy. And it is about whether we are willing to draw boundaries that protect them from unnecessary exposure. Now, as we approach Prince Archie's 7th birthday, perhaps this is an opportunity to shift the conversation. To move away from analysis and toward respect. To move away from scrutiny and toward celebration. Because at the end of the day, this is a child's birthday. It is a moment that should be filled with joy, with laughter, with family, and with simple happiness. Not with headlines. Not with debates. Not with unnecessary attention. So let's take a moment to acknowledge that. Let's take a moment to respect that. And let's take a moment to wish Prince Archie a happy birthday. A birthday filled with happiness, with peace, and with the freedom to simply be a child. Because that is what truly matters. Today we need to talk about something that has become not just repetitive, but frankly exhausting. The ongoing smear campaign against Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, pushed relentlessly by the Daily Mail. Because at this point, it's not even subtle anymore. It's predictable. It's formulaic. And increasingly, it's absurd. Let's start with the latest headline that's been making the rounds. According to the Daily Mail, Meghan is spiralling badly. They claim that she and Harry have burned all their bridges, citing supposed fallout with powerful figures like Anna Wintour and even the Kardashian family. They go further, talking about alleged money woes, hidden problems, and dramatic insider claims that things are worse than anyone realizes. Now pause for a second. Ask yourself, how many times have we heard this exact same storyline? Because if you've been following coverage of Harry and Meghan over the past few years, you'll notice a pattern. Every few months, there's a new crisis. Every few months, there's a new insider. Every few months, Meghan is supposedly on the brink. And yet, none of these catastrophic predictions ever actually materialize. This is where we need to separate narrative from reality. The narrative says, Meghan is isolated, disliked, struggling, and falling apart. Reality says, she continues to work, build projects, raise her family, and maintain a global presence alongside Harry. So why does this gap exist? Why is there such a consistent effort to paint Meghan in a negative light? Let's talk about the media model for a moment. Publications like the Daily Mail thrive on engagement, and nothing drives engagement more than outrage, controversy, and emotional reactions. And whether people like to admit it or not, Meghan has become one of the most clickable figures in modern media. She's not just a person in their coverage, she's a symbol that gets projected onto, a symbol that gets blamed, a symbol that gets dissected far beyond what would be considered normal for most public figures. But here's where things take a darker turn. It's not just Meghan being targeted anymore. Even Archie Mountbatten-Windsor, their child, has not been spared from media narratives and commentary. And that should be a line that no publication crosses. Because once children become part of the narrative machinery, it stops being journalism and starts becoming something else entirely. Something more intrusive. Something more harmful. Now let's look closely at this idea of burning bridges. The Daily Mail claims fallout with Anna Wintour. But where is the evidence? Are there public statements? Are there verified sources? Or is it once again built on anonymous insiders, a term that has become so overused it's almost meaningless? The same goes for the Kardashians. Why are they even part of this story? What concrete interaction is being referenced? Or is it simply name-dropping powerful figures to make the story feel bigger, more dramatic, more scandalous? Because that's a common tactic. You attach big names, you imply conflict, and suddenly you've created a narrative that feels important, even if it's built on speculation. Then there's the claim about money woes. This is another recurring theme. Every so often, we're told that Harry and Meghan are struggling financially. And yet, they've signed major deals, produced content, launched initiatives, and maintained a lifestyle that clearly contradicts the idea of financial collapse. So again, we have to ask, is this reporting or is this storytelling? And this is where the conversation becomes bigger than just Harry and Meghan. Because what we're witnessing here is a case study in how modern media constructs and maintains narratives. Once a storyline is established, in this case Meghan is difficult, problematic, or failing, it gets repeated, reinforced, and recycled. Even when evidence doesn't support it. Even when reality contradicts it. Now let's address something directly. The blame placed on Meghan in these stories is not just excessive, it's disproportionate. In many of these narratives, she is positioned as the sole cause of every issue. If relationships break down, it's Meghan. If there's tension, it's Meghan. If something goes wrong, it somehow traces back to Meghan. That level of singular blame is not normal. It's not balanced. And it raises serious questions about bias. Because here's the truth. No public figure is perfect. Harry isn't perfect. Meghan isn't perfect. No one is. But the standard applied to Meghan is different. It's harsher. It's more persistent. And it often crosses into territory that feels less like criticism and more like targeting. And let's not ignore the role of audience conditioning. When people are exposed to the same negative narrative over and over again, it starts to feel true, even without evidence. That's how repetition works. That's how narratives stick. And that's why it's important to step back and question what we're being told. So when the Daily Mail says Meghan is spiralling, what does that actually mean? What measurable actions support that claim? What verified facts back it up? Or is it simply a dramatic phrase designed to trigger a reaction? Because words matter. Framing matters. And when you consistently frame someone in a negative way, it shapes public perception, whether it's accurate or not. And this brings us to a crucial point: accountability. Media organizations have a responsibility. Not just to report, but to report fairly. Not just to inform, but to avoid unnecessary harm. And when coverage becomes overwhelmingly one-sided, it stops serving the public and starts serving a narrative. Now, let's be clear. Criticism is not the issue. Public figures can and should be criticized. But there's a difference between criticism and constant character assassination. There's a difference between analysis and obsession. And what we're seeing with Meghan often crosses that line. So what can we do as viewers, readers, and participants in this media ecosystem? First, we can think critically. We can question sources. We can ask whether claims are supported by evidence or just speculation. Second, we can resist the urge to accept narratives at face value. Just because something is repeated doesn't make it true. And third, we can choose what we engage with, because attention is power. And the stories that get the most attention are the ones that keep getting told. At the end of the day, Meghan is a human being, a mother, a public figure navigating an incredibly intense level of scrutiny. And whether you like her or not, the level of negativity directed at her deserves to be examined. Not blindly accepted. Because if we don't question these narratives, they become the norm. And when that happens, it doesn't just affect one person. It sets a precedent for how others can be treated in the public eye. So yes, when we say let us protect Meghan from smear campaigns, it's not about blind support. It's about fairness. It's about balance. It's about pushing back against narratives that don't hold up under scrutiny. And it's also about recognizing that media consumption is not passive. We play a role in what gets amplified. We play a role in what continues. And we have the ability to demand better. Because at some point we have to ask, how many times can the same story be told before we start questioning the storyteller? How many anonymous insiders does it take before credibility becomes an issue? How many crises need to not happen before we stop believing they will? These are not unreasonable questions. They're necessary ones. So the next time you see a headline claiming Meghan is spiraling, take a moment, look beyond the words, look for the evidence, and decide for yourself whether it reflects reality or just another recycled narrative. Thank you for watching. If you found this discussion helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.